Everyone keeps hearing that the Durham Region real estate market is so hot. And while this is true, there's a lot of problems that are actually brewing from this. Brad Goetz with Right at Home Realty. I typically create a lot of videos, which is to it helps people who are looking to move to either Whitby, Ajax, Pickering, Oshawa, and even Toronto. And while I was doing my research for some of my future videos, along with a lot of questions that I've been asked, I just figured maybe it was time to do a video in terms of what I'm seeing in the market to help answer a lot of questions that I'm kind of getting asked all the time. And it doesn't really matter who I'm talking to, whether it's an Uber driver or somebody who's coming from a different country. It's always the exact same question, and it's always, do I see a market cool down coming? Will prices stay the same? Will they go up? Will they go down? So I figured, let me just share what I've witnessed over the last few months to help be able to explain my thought process behind it, to help give you a better idea of what is actually happening in the market and all these problems that are actually brewing under the surface that a lot of people may not see. The first one is with the pre-construction. So when COVID first happened back in March, it was almost like the whole housing industry as a whole just kind of got put on hold. Nobody knew what was going to be going on. Builders, everything was kind of closed. So it was kind of, nothing was being built or released. The buildings or houses that had been sold previously, everything kind of slowed down because there was just not the workers to actually complete the work. I'm in a brand new construction site. My house is not even a year old yet. And throughout most of the summer, the construction in this neighborhood had really slowed down. And it was just mainly because there was no workers that would be able to do the work, or if there were, there wasn't as many. The construction materials were very hard to come by and very expensive. I was talking to a contractor friend of mine, and he said that the cost of lumber and drywall overall that they would be using to build homes or actually renovating them had increased by about 30%. And that was just because the construction materials weren't being created or being manufactured at the same rate that it was before. So then when everything kind of reopened up again, the supply of building materials was hard to come by. And so when you have that, it kind of makes the houses harder to build, and it just got them more expensive too because the cost of materials had gone up so much. And on top of that, there wasn't a ton of inventory being released. So you have a big pool of people who are shopping pretty much for the same homes. And during that, you've seen price increases through the builders, or some of the incentives that they were being offered previously were not being there because they just didn't have the ability to offer those incentives, on top of the fact that there were so many people looking to buy new homes that they didn't need to throw a ton of incentives at people in order to close the sale or help people get into the new homes. For the resale market, there was like no inventory. So typically, if it's a healthy market, you're looking at about 6 months worth of inventory. So if no new home was to be put on the market, then it would take about 6 months for the current inventory to be depleted. So throughout the hot times, that kind of goes down to about 3 months. So 3 months would indicate that it's a seller's market. There's not the supply out there in order to feed all of the demand. And then what we're at right now is we're between 1 and 2 months worth of inventory. So it just goes to show there are not that many homes that are actually even on the market for people to purchase. And the ones that are, you have a pool of so many people that are looking to buy them that you get crazy bidding wars that are happening. I've had a client that submitted over 11 offers on different properties to finally get one. And some of the ones we were competing with had 18, 24, 30, 15. Like there was just a huge range of how many offers were actually being submitted. So the winners, of course, they felt good that they won, but they ended up paying 75 to 100, sometimes even more, just to win. And then on top of that, there was no contingencies whatsoever. So they were firm on financing, and then they didn't even do a home inspection. So then what you have happen there is they could be inheriting problems of a house. So on top of overpaying it, they've also got to come up with the money to fix things that a home inspection typically would have caught. Now, granted, the homes are being underpriced on purpose to induce bidding wars because people are just finding if they price it at what the market says that it should get, people won't even show it or not even want to see it because they're going to feel that it's going to go way above what it's being listed for, which can be very discouraging for a lot of first-time home buyers or those buying with a 5% down payment, because if you see something that's at 499,000 and your budget is 500,000, you don't know that that's maybe a $600,000 home that they've priced at that. On top of that, you have to also worry about the appraisal. If you get the appraisal done and it comes in a lot less than what you paid for the home, then you're responsible to cover the difference between what the appraised value comes in at and then what the home actually sold for. So sometimes that can be a large number. I'm not saying it happens a lot, but it has happened where people are responsible for paying the difference between what the appraised value is and what they actually paid it for. And as somebody who's going with 5% down, it can be stressful on that. Because I remember when I purchased my first home in 2012, I was scrounging for the money to cover closing costs or lawyer's fees, which is a closing cost. But the whole fact of having to come up with, an extra 20,000 on top of the 5% that I had already kind of saved, that would have just been impossible for me at that time. Now with all this, you might think, oh, it's great for sellers. Well, that is true, but if you're selling in a market that's hot, you're also buying in a market that's hot. So you are affected because you might get more, but you're also paying more. And what this happens is it actually causes less people to list because they understand they might get a great price for their home, but then they're going to have to go out into the same market and try and find something. Typically, they might look at pre-construction homes, but in markets like this where the pre-construction homes are hard to come by or they're just super expensive, they're not even looking at that. So then what are they thinking? Oh, they can sell and then they rent. Well, the problem with that is higher house prices equals higher rental prices. And then you have a lot of homeowners who are entering the market as renters, which is increasing the demand for rental properties, which is again increasing the prices on those. So you have more people entering the market to rent, and then you have less inventory, and you're going to equal higher prices. I had a listing in Newmarket. It was for rent. It was a 2-bedroom, 1.5-story home. We had it listed at $2,200, and within 24 hours, I had over 30 showings. I had over 40 people reach out from Realtor.ca alone, and we had 5 offers within the first 24 hours. And these offers were coming in all above what it was being listed for, being prepaid 6 months, 8 months. I had one person who was offering to prepay a whole year in advance just to get the place. So it just kind of showed how low the inventory was, that people were so desperate to actually find properties. And of those 5 offers, there was 3 of them where they were actually people who sold their home and wanted to rent instead of buy another property. Now, I do have tips at the end, and this will help navigate you through the buying process in a market like this, but I really need to get through these points so that you can fully understand what I'm seeing in this market. So let's just say you're going to look at a home that's been on the market for a couple weeks. Most likely it's due to issues with the home, or it's already overpriced as it is. And then if you don't have the money to fully pay for all the repairs that are going to be in with the home, you've bought a home at a higher price that probably needs a lot of work, and then you're going to have to come up with the money for repairs. So you're maxing out your mortgage ability, and then you're also inheriting more debt because you have to pay for the bill to actually fix a lot of these problems. The tough part about this is, as a first-time home buyer, you're told to buy, build equity, sell, move up. Buy, build equity, sell, move up. And it's supposed to build equity for you. But when you're making massive increases of the people that are buying in the market, it's harder to buy those properties. And then you get it, and you might be paying a lot more than what it's worth. Tons of people are moving here who can afford it. And that's the hard part about it as well, is because they're not coming with 5% down. They might be coming with 50% down, or they're paying cash for the house altogether, which is hard as a first-time home buyer, that you could be competing with somebody who's not even getting a mortgage on a property, and they're buying it for either an investment, or they're just downsizing where their home was paid off and they're looking at something that's $600,000 where they don't even need a mortgage for it, and they're going to have money in the bank on top of it. Some of the reasons that this market is so hot, because you're dealing with job growth, you're having an increase in immigration. Typically, Canada would welcome about 300,000 people every single year, where the Canadian government just announced that they wanted to welcome 1.3 million immigrants over the next 3 years, which adds up to sound like a big number, but realistically, it's only an extra 100,000 people on top of what they would typically welcome here. Or you're having people that are moving here for the quality of life that might be a little better. They're leaving cities which are completely locked down, and they just don't want to be there anymore. That's part of the reason it is so hot right now. But homeowners don't know where to go. The new builds are really expensive, And just as an example, I had somebody call me last week that had purchased a $700,000 condo townhouse in Oshawa, and they asked my opinion on how that was. And they weren't going to use me regardless, but the fact is I told them right up front that for $710,000 for a condo townhome that was an end unit seemed very expensive to me, considering you could get an older detached for the exact same price, that you had a bigger lot, fully private backyard, and it was just like the pros and cons of a condo townhouse compared to an older detached. It just felt like the builder was charging a lot, and I guess they would because people are paying it. Then you're also having a lot of people that are not selling, and then they're renovating instead. So instead of buying a new home, they might redo their kitchen and bathrooms. They might add a pool in their backyard. They might add an addition to make their home bigger. The moral here is they're staying put and they're not listing their homes. Builders, they're busy building and they're just playing catch up with what they had sold previously prior to this crazy market. And then you have contractors that are so busy with all the work that's out there, where it's almost like they're getting calls nonstop for people looking to do something to their house. And then with that, you're having busy contractors, which, they're able to charge a little bit more as well. Some of the biggest problems that I see with this is overbidding causes higher prices. Okay, that's number one. But then also the property taxes are going to increase. If you're staying put in your home and people on your street are selling and they're selling for a high amount of money, well, it's going to be a matter of time before MPAC reassesses the value of your home. And now instead of being assessed at 400,000, it might be assessed at 500,000 or 600,000, which is a big jump in your tax rate, considering some of the tax rates around here can be very high. Now let's talk about the mortgage deferral. A lot of people had to use this because they were either temporarily laid off or they didn't know what was going to happen. So they kind of signed up for the mortgage deferral, which pretty much added a few months of mortgage payments to the end of the mortgage term. So it increased your amortization. And that was up in September. So what's going to happen now when people who did this mortgage deferral have to start paying their mortgage again, where maybe their job didn't go back to how it was, or the household income has been it's been hurt. So that's going to be an interesting factor to see what's going to happen with all those. So maybe more people will be forced to list their home because they can't afford it, or unfortunately they will be foreclosed on. And as a realtor, I hate seeing this. My job as a realtor is to put people in homes, not take people out of them. It breaks my heart. I didn't make this video to bring down what is happening. In this market, there's a lot of buyers that are buying, and it just really bothers me that people could be out of their home. Well, great for investors, you might think. Well, I don't think it will loosen up the market enough in order to help balance out the supply and demand issues that we're seeing right now. If there's an increase in demand, there's also going to be needing an increase in supply, and the more and more people that are moving here will really offset that, because I just don't feel that enough people can be listing their homes to sustain the amount of people that actually want to move to this area. I can't fully predict what's going to happen in this market, and I'm not saying don't move here. I'm just saying, or explaining as a realtor YouTuber, what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking in this market, because it is crazy and it's just hard to navigate through. But I have had some success with people who have been looking to move here, and they did get a property. They didn't have to overpay for it. It was just they never gave up, and we kept at it, and then it was just a matter of time before they did get lucky and they did get that offer accepted. So for the tips part, the first tip, get your financing in order. If you do have an offer that's accepted and it's conditional 5 days on financing, you want to make sure that you can firm up within those 5 days. Because if you can't, odds are the seller may not extend your financing condition, because most likely a lot of those buyer's agents that are having a hard time finding properties for their clients, they're going to be calling that listing agent and just keep hounding them to say, I have people, they'll pay a lot more, they'll let me know if it doesn't go through. So then you might have a seller that, you didn't get your financing in order and they're not willing to extend your conditional period. So then you ended up doing all that for nothing. Where if you started with the financing and you had that solid from the start, it would just make things go so much easier. If you have a home to sell, I would consider selling first, because in markets like this, it can shift anytime, and you don't want to be stuck in a position where you've bought in a home and then you have to sell your home and then the market has shifted. Do I see that happening? Not really, but let's just say you buy a house. It's nice to know that your home is already sold first, especially if the listing agent is asking your realtor if If the house has sold, just to make sure that you're a solid offer, it's good to say that yes, it's sold and you're good to go. Now, if you're a first, a second, a third time buyer, the main thing is just stay positive. Don't get discouraged and work with your realtor. Put a plan in place. That way you can navigate through this market properly. I've had it where people are competing on 10 offers and then on the 11th one, they actually get it. And it just feels so much better to get something where you don't feel like you overpaid and that it's a home you actually like. So just stay positive, don't get discouraged, and then just work with your realtor to make sure that there's a proper plan in place to make sure that you are able to go out and see properties and write those offers. Brad Goetz, right at home. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, you can reach out anytime.